Dave Palumbo with another RxMuscle rant brought to you by Redcon One. Visit redcon1.com. Today's topic, Dexter Jackson, the Blade, the Ageless Wonder, the guy with the most victories in the IFBB Pro League, the guy who's won 5 Arnold Classics and the 2008 Mr. Olympia. He might go down as the greatest bodybuilder of all time, especially if we classify longevity as well as wins into the factor. Look, Dexter just came off a tremendous Arnold Classic, second place, right behind William Bonac by only a couple of points. I mean, here's a guy at 48 years old, who'll be 49 in November this year, who is still doing it as good today as he did it 10, 15, 20 years ago, which is incredible in the sport of bodybuilding because the body just doesn't last. The elasticity of the skin disintegrates, you get injuries, muscle atrophy. Dexter doesn't seem to be vulnerable to that. Father Time seems to have forgotten about Dexter Jackson, and they just don't care, and he just keeps getting better. I don't know if Dexter's gotten better. He certainly hasn't gotten worse, and his best is still, maybe ahead of him. I don't know. It's crazy when you think about what this guy's done. He started as a bantamweight bodybuilder at 145 pounds on stage. I mean, he was a small guy. Yeah, he got good shape, and he always was really ripped. But who would have thought, that this guy would have become this guy? I mean, that's probably the greatest success story of all time because, when you see a guy 145 pounds and he says to people, "Hey, I'm going to be Mr. Olympia one day," you got to think he's a nutcase, But Dexter is one of these guys who just always finds a way to win. I remember back at I think it was 1994, he won the Southern States, which was a big regional show here in Florida, and he won as a middleweight, but he won the overall. And this is back in the day when ESPN used to cover bodybuilding, and I remember watching it at home because, I was an upcoming bodybuilder, and I was always scoping out who the potential competition would be in the future. And, I see this guy, I'm like, this freaking guy looks dangerous. He's 176 pounds, but holy mackerel, I hope this guy doesn't get any bigger. I really saw him as a threat, Even back then, I remember just seeing that detail that he had in his physique when he hit shots. He just didn't look like a middleweight. A year later, at the USA, in 95, he wins the light heavyweight class. He probably weighed 182 pounds. And remember, the cutoff for the light heavyweight is 198. So he was giving up 17 pounds of muscle to some of these guys, even more probably. He came back to the 95 Nationals. I remember I was there in New Orleans, and the guy didn't make the top 15. He didn't even get the pose. He did a quarter turns and walked up the stage. I think the judges just missed him because he was a small, he looked small just standing there in the lineup. And he was so dejected. I saw him in the lobby. I went up to him and I said, man, I don't know if I even remembered his name at the time, but I did. I knew who he was. I said, you got shafted worse than I've seen anyone get shafted because he probably should have won the class in 95. And he didn't even get top 15. Back then, if you weren't in the top 15, you didn't even pose at the prejudging. They walked you right off stage. So I said, look, don't be dejected. I said, these guys are out of their minds. You will be a pro in probably a couple of years. Sure enough, I believe it was the 98 North Americans. He won the light heavyweight class. I think he was 188 pounds. He still was giving up 10 pounds to these other guys. And he won the overall. And he got his pro card, and the rest is history. He competed through the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s, with the best of the best, with the Lavronis, with the Wheelers, with the Nassers, with the Cormiers, with the Dorians, with the Ronnie Colemans. He's faced everyone, this guy. And, at first in his career, he had a tough run in the pro ranks because he was a lot smaller than everyone. But little by little, he put on the size and he started winning shows. And I think that here's a guy that people realized was very, very dangerous in any lineup. He's the guy who's always waiting in the wings, ready to beat anyone who's a little bit off. He's like a wolf, just waiting to jump on the prey. And that's what makes him so dangerous. I mean, in 08, Jay Cutler was knocking off Olympias like nothing. I don't think anyone saw Dexter Jackson ever as a threat to win the Olympia. He was a guy who was always like a top 6 guy because he was just shredded and he had great, cartoonish looking muscle bellies. And sure enough, Jay Cutler comes into the show off that year, and boom, Dexter Jackson is standing right there. He wins the Olympia and he wins the 3 Grand Prix right after that in Europe, and that's a legacy right there. How many Mr. Olympias really are there? Now, Dexter did lose the Olympia the following year when Jay made that comeback, but I remember, talking to friends of mine from the Bronx who knew Dexter Jackson when he was competing, and they said that Dexter was going around. This is before Dexter won anything. This guy, Dexter Jackson's telling everyone he's going to be Mr. Olympia one day. He's going to be a pro bodybuilder. And, people thinking, this is a guy who's 5'7". He's not going to be Mr. Olympia. He's not going to be a pro. And he proved everyone wrong. When you evaluate the history of a bodybuilder, and this is probably when he turned pro, or right before it. This is even a little further back. This is 92. But you can tell, you could see he's just got the structure right there. Like man, I'll kill for that body, right? I mean, look at the size of his arms. They're like almost as big as his head. And that's back in, a long time before he even turned pro. But when you evaluate what makes a bodybuilder great, yeah, you look at the Olympia victories, obviously. You look at like a guy like Dorian, 6 victories. You see Arnold has 7 victories. You see Ronnie has 8 victories. But then you got to look at how long are they doing it? How consistently are they doing it? How many different shows have they won? Most Olympia guys, like Dorian, only won the Olympia. They never did the Arnold Classic. Dexter's won 5 Arnold Classic USAs, 9 total Arnold Classics. He won the New York Pro, he used to be United Champions. He might have even won United Champions. He won the Mr. Olympia Europe, which I think was only 1 year. The guy's won everything. He's pretty much done every show, and he's got the Olympia title in 08. So here's a guy who's gone all over the world, competed. He's probably made more prize money than everyone out there as well. He has the record for the most wins of any pro bodybuilder, and he's still adding to that record. I don't think he's hardly done. How can he not be considered one of the greatest of all time? I consider Ronnie Coleman the greatest physique of all time, but I don't know if he's the greatest bodybuilder because he did it for a while, but he didn't. He hasn't won as many shows as Dexter. He also got started a little later. So Dexter's certainly one of the top 5 of all time. You have to put him in that elite category. And the funny thing is that he's going to be 50 in 2 years, and you know what? He might be competing still and winning shows at 50 years old. And there's not many guys that have done that. Maybe Robbie Robinson did that, Al Beckles, but there's not many of them who have achieved the level of success that he has. And the funny thing is, if Dexter decided he wanted to do more shows, he would have even more wins. Right now he kind of sticks to the top tier shows. But he can do the New York Pro again, easily win that probably. He can do a Tampa Pro and get another victory there. That's something, if he wants to go collecting wins, he can more than easily accomplish that. So to me, Dexter Jackson's legacy is complete. If he never did another show, never won another show, at this point though, you have to look at the scenario. How does Dexter Jackson, can he win the Olympia again? Because I think that's really what he wants, one more Olympia victory. That would really cement his place in what he's accomplished, and I think that would make him probably the greatest of all time. How does he do that? Well, look at George Foreman later in his career, when he knocked out Michael Moore. He said it in interviews. He's like, I knew I had that knockout punch still in me. I just had to position these guys and get them in front of me so that I can land that punch. And he did that with Michael Moore. People thought Foreman was a big joke coming back. He knocked him out. He regained the World Heavyweight Championship in a way that no one ever felt possible. And Dexter can do the same thing. Imagine he shows up, Big Rami's off like he normally is. Rodin's a little off. He hasn't been his best the last couple of years. He's been dealing with some health issues. Dexter's right there in the best shape of his life. And Phil Heath comes in off, maybe a little flat. It becomes a Dexter-Bonac battle, okay? And Dexter has got that sharpness, and you never know. Dexter can come out on top. Maybe Bonac's off a little bit. So there is a scenario where Dexter certainly has the ability to win the Olympia again. Will it happen? We don't know, obviously. But as long as he keeps staying there and being in the mix, he's always a danger to win that show. And if I were Dexter, if I were to win the show in the next couple of years again, that would be it. I'd call it quits and say, that's a career. Even if he doesn't, Dexter, in my book, you're still maybe the greatest of all time. And I certainly give you a top 2 or 3 title up there with Ronnie Coleman and Arnold Schwarzenegger. For now, though, I'm Dave Palumbo with another Redcon 1 RxMuscle rant.
Don't you hate when your protein powder doesn't mix properly? Redcon One's 100% whey isolate, Isotope, tastes great, is the absolute highest quality, and of course, mixes well. No shaking required.